Okay, so tempo mapping in Reaper 5.9. So I, like many others, I'm sure, will often import a raw audio file as a track and then play along to it. Now, if you're just playing along, that's fine. But if you want to start doing things like looping certain riffs that you've played, then you really need the tempo set up to follow the song. And the truth is, no song is ever in absolutely 100% perfect tempo. So if you rely on the tempo you've set in Reaper, and you copy loops or do anything, insert a click track even, it's going to be off. So how do we fix that? So I'll state that I'm not an expert on this, and there may be better ways of doing it. But this is what I found looking through various. So I basically had to find different forum posts and videos on this, which all cover this to a certain degree, but I don't feel like they covered all the pieces, and they also often referred to older versions of Reaper, which things have changed a bit, and I found it difficult to follow them. So hence this video. So this is the process I used, and I'm going to start by showing you what I mean by the tempo being off, in case that's not clear. So I've decided to use a portion of Shipping Up to Boston by the Dropkick Murphys. Let me undo that. Before I do that, let me state what I would have done previously to knowing all of this. Now I would have found some BPM for the song, right? So this BPM, songbpm.com is handy. I look up the song, it says it's 129. Now, what I'm going to show you is it's not exactly 129. It's some slightly different than that. So, nevertheless, I'll start with 129. So I'll say 129. My timeline shifts accordingly. I'm going to insert my media file. I ship it to Boston. I'm going to cut this down quite a bit so it's not as long. I'll pause while okay, so I've trimmed this down so we're not dealing with as much, and I set it to 129 before I imported it, and at a quick glance at this scale, it looks like they kind of line up, meaning the main beats line up with the measures, but you can already see they don't. So I can zoom in and I can really see that. I can also, if I zoom in, you can see by the time I get to, for example, this measure, the beat's coming in much earlier than it would be on if it were precisely 129. So we can actually hear it if I insert a new track, Control T, and then insert click source, which is 129. I'll drag it out, and we can really see now, where this, for example, or in this case, bar 7, right? Here's my click, and this is clearly where the song is, where the main beat is. So it's off, and if I listen to it, we can hear it. I'll turn the main track down a little bit and the click track up all the way. Hopefully you can hear the click track. Right now it's very off. The click is not aligned with the audio. So yeah, so how do I fix that? That's what I want to know. So let's delete that click track for now. And so the first thing that's most important is to go to your project settings, and you want to set time base for items, envelopes, and markers to time, and make sure that time base for tempo time signature is also set to time. Both of these need to be set to time. The reason for that is, as we make adjustments to the tempo, we don't want this audio to actually change. If it was set to beats, then when we change the BPM here, it's going to actually adjust the audio file, and it won't be following its original tempo anymore. We don't want that. So setting those to time ensures that this audio will play back at its existing tempo. Also, I do project settings because in my scenarios, I've had multiple tracks all imported that were in time with one another, but all off altogether with a consistent BPM. So by using the project settings, any and all tracks will adhere to that. Okay, so the one other thing before I really get started here that I'm going to do is trim off the little beginning here that has nothing. So every audio track, has a little blank space at the beginning. And so I'm just going to turn off snapping and set my time cursor to about right there. Split that and get rid of beginning and pull this back. So now the moment it starts, is the precise moment I hear the first beat. Okay. So the first part of this is kind of the most arduous part, as it's a bit manual, but it really doesn't take that long to do this for a given song. And it may be easier, or I've chosen this song because it's pretty easy to pick up the beats. But usually looking at the waveform and listening, you can pick up where the main beats are on the beginning of every measure. So, but yeah, just doing it here, what you need to do is you need to insert a marker. Insert marker at, which you can see the shortcut for that is M, at every beginning measure main beat. So since I trimmed this already to start at the beginning, I'll go ahead and hit M to insert my first marker there, and then I will play it back, and just listening to the track, I will hit the M key to insert additional markers where I hear the main beat. So it may not be perfect at first, and I'm going to adjust that in a moment, but this is the arduous part. You have to go through it and do it, and I'll start doing it and then probably pause to finish it off. M, M, M. Okay, so I've gone through a bit further and I've put all my markers in. Now the next thing is to just adjust these slightly so they line up a bit better with the waveform. So just zoom in and drag it a bit. So I do this for each of my markers. Again, I'll pause while I go ahead and do that for each of them. Okay, so I've manually moved these markers around so they line up a bit better with the song. Took half a minute here, but it might take a few minutes, 5 minutes on a full-length song, but you get the idea. So that's step one, and that's the hard part, or I should say at least the most time-consuming part. So the next part is to split the track or tracks. If you had multiple, again, you could select them all, but I just use one track here, but split the track at each of these markers. So with a macro, this can be done in one fell swoop. So I will hit Shift / / to bring up the actions list, which I believe is also right here, show action list. I guess question mark also does that. And I've already set up these custom actions and assigned them a shortcut key and macro, but I can briefly I'm not going to go through this in detail, but I'll show you, these are my two custom ones that I'm referring to. So split project. I didn't want to do that. Hold on. Sorry. I want to hit edit so you can see. So this is basically doing two actions. The first one is go to next marker / project end. So basically when you're in the action list here, you can search for things. So go to next marker, project end, so there it is. And I added that as my first action. And then split items at project marker. That's the second one. So that's the simple macro there. And I assign that a shortcut key, Shift 7, for no particular reason. I just wanted a simple shift and number key to do it. So, so with that set, now when I go home, so make sure my play bar is at the very beginning. I'll select my track, hit home again, and now I'll hit Shift 7. And you can see what happened here is it actually split this up into the measures that are based off of my markers. So if I zoom in here, you know, this marker here now has a split here. So, and you don't worry about the fact that there's this, you know, fade in, fade out, because later on we're going to heal these, so they're all, it's all one track again. So I've split it. So now the next thing is to use each of these time segments that correspond to a measure in the actual song to set the corresponding tempo in Reaper. So to do this, again, I have a macro that does a couple of things. This is my set tempo for each measure macro that I created. And again, just to look at it quickly, it's three items here. So the first one is select and move to next item. Then set time selection to items. And then lastly, create measure from time selection, detect tempo. So it's going to do that. Basically, that allows me to, and I could have looped this, or I could have made this, sorry, wrong one. I could have had this macro run in such a way that it, you know, would do the whole song, but I prefer to do it, you know, each time slice at a time, because particularly at the end, I like to see what's happening. So nevertheless, what this is essentially doing, and I'll show you the manual mode, is it's, you know, taking, oops, there, taking, you know, this guy. I won't split it or turn on snapping, but you know, it selects this measure that's been split in the previous step, and then it says insert measure from time selection, detect tempo. So doing this manually would be kind of a pain, so that's why I have the macro. And if I just deselect this, deselected, and now I will hit Shift 8, and what you can see is it's going to each of my measured bars that are based on my markers that I put in, and it's slightly adjusting the timeline according to that, but it's not adjusting the actual audio. So now I've done all of them. I'm not going to do this last bit here because I cut the song off there. So now if you look at this, you can see, sorry, I like to unselect stuff before I start looking. If you look at this in the grid here, every place I put a marker based on the audio is now a measure in the song. Okay, so I'm done. What it means now is if I, well, so the last thing I'll do actually before I'm done is select all and go to item, heal split items, and now I've got a single track again without the splits. And now I will insert a new track, insert click source, oops, that one's, should be there, stretch it out, oops. And I'll play this back again, and now the click track will be in time to the actual audio. So you can hear that as the song progresses, my click track stays in time, and now I have a tempo map I can use I can use this click source throughout the whole song if I had the whole thing done. And if I record little bits and pieces and I want to copy them, put them in other areas of the song, loop them, everything will remain in time. So hopefully that's helpful to some people, and thanks a lot.